Hello Divination and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create a Divi timeline layout with scroll effects. This is the final result we're aiming to achieve. So without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let's get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here is to create a brand new page. So I'm going to come over here and click on add new. So here we are going to name our page template and then use the Divi builder. But of course you can name the page whatever you want. So this is just for demo purposes only. Now, usually we build this from scratch, but this time we are going to use a pre-made layout because it's going to have the elements that we're going to need to build this really fast. So I'm going to click here on choose pre-made layout. So we are going to choose the brewery layout pack. So I'm just going to search for it here and here we go. So this is the layout and the page we want is the about page. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it and use this template. All right. So the next step now is to delete all the parts that we don't need. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to start here with this header area. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, delete that, and the most important part we're going to need is this part right here. So let's go ahead and delete this part here on the top as well. And now we are left with the timeline, and I might as well delete all this here below as well. Okay, so all we have now is the main timeline. Next, we're going to create a section. So I'm going to click here on this plus button. It needs to be a regular section. So I'm going to select here and we are going to go with a single column and then say close this for now. Because what we need to do is to copy the modules here onto this section here. So next we're going to copy this text here. So I'm going to right click and copy module. And then over here, I'm going to paste it. Next, I'm going to go into the section background and we're going to add a gradient. So this gradient here is mainly going to be on our header. So I'm going to click here on heading and click on the second tab. Next, you're going to click on this plus button and the first color we're going to have here on the left is white, and then the second color is going to be always going to have transparency. So what I usually do is I just drag the slider down a little bit and then between the brackets I just go in and paste this value. Now if you want to use the exact same values as I'm using throughout this tutorial, I will leave a link to the post in the show notes below. All right, so now that I have this all set, the next step now is to set up my gradient direction, and I'm going to set this at 90%, and then we're going to come over here on the start position, set this to 50%, and then the end position is going to be at 0. Next, we're going to place the gradient above the image. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that. And then I'm going to come over here to the third tab to add our image. So I'm going to click here on this plus button. And the image that I'm going to use is of this gentleman here sitting. Upload an image. And there we go. So now I have my image in place. Now it's time to add my dividers to style this header. So I'm going to click here on design, dividers. So I am going to start with my top divider. So making sure top is selected, I'm going to click on this drop down, and the divider style I'm going to go with is this one here. And then next I need to add my colors and my height. So the color I'm going to use is going to have some transparency. So I'm going to click here on this color picker and drag the slider down a little bit and then paste my values between the brackets. Just like that. All right, so next I'm going to go to the divider height. So here on the divider height, by default, it's set to 100 pixels. So I'm going to set this to 50 VH. And then I'm also going to go to my spacing. So I'm going to scroll down here and go to spacing. In fact, before I go to spacing, I need to go to sizing to adjust my size. So here I'm going to go to my height because this is where we need to set it to 50 VH. And then on the padding, we're going to do the same. So I'm going to come over here on spacing, and for my padding top, we're going to set this to 20 VH. So this looks great. That's all I need to do for now. I'm going to save this, and I'm also going to add another section. So I'm going to click here on this plus button. It's going to be regular single column. Now let's go in and set our background colors. So I'm just going to close this and then click on this gear icon here to go into the section settings. Next, we're going to click on background, and this is going to be a gradient. So I'm going to click on the second tab, click here on this plus button, and my first color here is going to have full transparency. So I'm going to add the values between the brackets like that. And then for the next color, it's going to be a gray color. So again, I'm going to paste my hexadecimal value here like that. And now let's add our gradient direction. So for our gradient direction, it needs to be at 90 degrees. The starting position is going to be 50%, and then the ending position is going to be 0. Like we did before, we're going to place the gradient above the background image. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then next I need to come over here to the design tab, because here we are going to add some padding. So I'm going to click here on spacing, and the top and bottom padding needs to be set to 0. All right, so we can close this now. And then next we need to go into the row settings. So I'm going to click here on this gear icon, and then we're going to click here on design, sizing. Activate use custom gutter width. Now here the gutter width is the space between the columns, so we don't want any spaces between the columns. So I'm going to drag this all the way to 1. Now it's time to set our width. So by default it's set to 80%. So we want this to be 100%, and also our maximum width needs to be 100%. Now this basically ensures that my design is going to be edge to edge. For our row alignment, I'm going to set this to the right. And then next I need to set my padding. So I'm going to come over here on spacing and set my padding top to 300 pixels. All right, so the next step now is to come over here to border. So here we're going to add the left border. So I'm going to make sure I select the right tab, and then over here on the border width, this needs to be set to 2 pixels. And we're also going to add a color to this. So I'm going to click here on the color picker. In fact, you know what? This color that we have here by default is the right color. So we're going to go with that. And then the next step now is to add a box shadow. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to scroll down, click on box shadow, and this is the style that we're going to go with. And now let's start making some tweaks. So over here on our box shadow horizontal position, I'm going to set this to -2. And then over here on the vertical position, I'm going to set this to 0. And then finally, the spread strength needs to be 0 as well. So pretty much that's all we need to do. I'm going to save this. So now that our line is in place, the next step now is to start adding our blurbs. So I'm going to come all the way to the top here and copy this one here. So I'm going to right click, copy module, and then I'm going to come all the way down here and paste it. So now the next step is to go into the blurb settings by clicking here on this gear icon. And then we're going to come over here and add this CSS code. So I'm going to click here on text, and we're just going to enter a line here and paste this. Now, of course, if you want this, this can be found in the post, which I'll link to in the show notes below. All right, so now that I've added that text, we need to go in and make some design changes to this blurb. So what we're going to do now is to just go ahead, click on this design tab, and then we're going to start with our unordered list. So I'm going to come over here to body text. So first of all, my font here needs to be Open Sans. So I'm going to search for it and select it. Then the body weight needs to be semi-bold. Now let's move on to the color, and here the color is going to have this hexadecimal value. The text size is going to be 16. Now let's adjust our line height, because currently it's set to 1.8, so this needs to be 1.5. Now over here on unordered list style, let's set this to none. Now this position here, the unordered list position, it needs to be set to inside. And the indent, we're going to set this to 1 pixel. All right, so now that we have this, we need to start working on the icon itself. So we're going to come over here to image and icon, and the icon color is going to be white. And now let's add the circle. So I'm going to go ahead and select the circle here, and we need to now add the circle color, which we're going to do by clicking here on the eyedropper tool and pasting our color in here. Now the icon placement needs to be on the left. So we just want to make sure here it's set to left. Now we also need to customize the icon font size. So let's set this to 30. Okay, so now let's set our margins. So to do that, we're going to come over here to spacing. And for our margin here, we're going to set this to -27. Now let's go to sizing. Now here on sizing, we are going to first of all start with our maximum width. So currently it's set to none. We need this at 300 pixels. And our height here is also going to be 300 pixels. Next, we're going to add our title line height. So if you can't find it, the quickest way to do this is to just search for it. So let's search for title line height. And here it is. So this needs to be set to 50 pixels. Okay, great. So we want to also make sure that there's no animation on this module. So we're going to come all the way down here to animation and make sure it's set to none. And then over here, we also need to make sure there's no animation. Next, we're going to come over here to advanced, and then we're going to click on position, because here we need to set the Z index. So currently it's set to 0. We want this to set to 1. Okay, so pretty much this is done. I'm going to save this, and then we're going to add a divider just below this module here. So I'm going to click here on this plus button and search for my divider. Select it. So here usually it says show divider. Now that's not what we're going to do. So we're going to say no to that. And then we're going to come over here to the background and add our color. So I'm just going to paste it in here like that. Now the next step is to make this divider circular. So to do that, we're going to come over here to design, and then we're going to go into sizing. Right, so over here now we're going to start with the width, and we're going to set this to 50 pixels. The height is also going to be 50 pixels. And now it's time to go to the rounded corners, because this is how we're going to get the little dot. I know we can't see it because right now here it's a square. And so now let's go over here to the border. So now I can add my 50% here, and notice that my chain here is activated. So that means it is going to apply the 50% to all the sides. Now the next step is to go into the advanced tab, and this is where we're going to go to our position. And what we need here is absolute. So we're going to go ahead and select that. And then the horizontal offset is going to be -27. There we go. So now you can just about see that it is pretty much aligned here. Now let's head over to the scroll effects, which are just under this. So now that I have my scroll effects enabled, what I'm going to do now is to start off with my vertical scroll. And as you can see here, this is the first one, the first tab. So we're going to say yes to that. And then next, we are going to make some adjustments here on our starting offset and our ending offset. So our starting offset now is going to be 0, and our ending is going to be 3. Next, we're going to set our viewport top to 75%. So I'm going to drag this down to 75, and you can see this dot here moving. The next step now is to come over here to scaling up and down. I'm going to select that, activate it. And again, I'm going to set my starting scale, middle scale, and ending scale. So all these, these two are going to be 50%. It's going to be 50 over here too, and then 90%. Now let's adjust the viewports. So the first one here, the bottom one, is going to be at 50%. But in fact, you know what? Before we do that, why don't we split this, because we need these split. So the first one here is going to be 55. The second part here is going to be 70. Okay, so now we can adjust this one here and bring it all the way up to 50 like that. And then the viewport top needs to be at 75. Right, so that's looking great. Next, we're going to set our motion trigger, which is going to be the top element. We're going to do the same here as well, and it's on top element. All right, so now that we have this, the next step now is to create the pulse highlighting divider. And to do that, we're just going to duplicate what we have here already. So I'm going to come over here and click on the layers. Okay, so I'm going to go into the sections, the rows, columns. So I'm just going to now duplicate this divider here. And then we're going to click here on this gear icon. So to make our adjustments, I'm going to come over here to advanced, scroll effects, and on the first tab, we're going to go to vertical motion and disable that. And then over here now on the scaling up and down, we need to make some adjustments here. So we're going to change this to 100% now. The middle part here is going to be 160%, and then 130. So pretty much this is done. And what's also a good idea here is to go ahead and label these. So let's call this pulse. And then here we're going to name this runner 1. And this is blurb 1. Now the reason why we're doing this is because we can reference this much easier later on. So the next step now is to duplicate these 3 modules. So I'm just going to go and duplicate these one by one. So I'm going to start with blurb 1. And then move on to runner 1 and then pulse. But we're going to stack them in such a way that they're in the right order. So I'm just going to drag this down. Drag the runner 1. And then we have the pulse. So to make it easier to identify, I'm going to go in and just name this Blurb 2, Runner 2, and Pulse 1. There we go. So now it's easy to identify. So the next step now is to come over here to Runner 2, because here we need to make some adjustments. So I'm going to come over here to Advanced, Position, and we want to make sure that we set our vertical offset to 300. Next, we're going to come all the way down here to our scroll effects and also make some adjustments to our scaling. So I'm going to click here. So our starting scale here is going to be 100 now. And then I also need to update the pulse. So I'm going to save this, come over here and click on this gear icon. We go to Advanced, Scroll Effects. And here we also need to adjust the vertical offset. So let's go over here to Position, and we are going to set this to 300 and then save. All right, so the next step is to duplicate these again. So let's go ahead and do that. And finally, Pulse 1. And as we did before, we need to stack them in the right order. So I'm going to drag this all the way down here to the bottom. Next, it's Runner 2. Now it's time to rename them. So I'm going to come over here, and this is going to be Blurb 3, Runner 3, and Pulse 2. Now it's time to go to Runner 3, click Advanced, Position, and here we're going to set our offset to 600 pixels. All right, so now that we've adjusted that, we are going to save this, and then we're going to go to our Blurb and make some changes as well. So now we're going to go to Blurb 2 and click here on this gear icon. So with Blurb 2, what we need to do here is to update the divider vertical offset, increasing it by 300 pixels. So we're going to come over here to Design, and we're going to go into our text. And this time we need to make sure this is over to the right, aligned to the right. We're going to come over here to Transform. And here on Transform, we're going to break the chain and set our position here to -250. And now we're going to go into the Advanced tab, Custom CSS, and in the main element, we are going to paste the CSS code. All right, so now that we've added our CSS code here in the main element, the next step now is to go into Runner 1. So I'm going to save this and come over here to Runner 1 by clicking here on this gear icon. And now that we have that, we need to go into Advanced Scroll Effects, and we need to set up our scroll effects here. So make sure it's activated. And we're going to start off with -4, and we're going to end with 3. Okay, so pretty much we have everything that we need. I'm going to save this, and I'm just going to collapse these like that. So as you can see here, things are moving, but we need to center everything correctly. So what I'm going to do now is to delete this. And now we have our main hero area here. So let's save this and preview it. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to publish. Now let's take a look and see if this is working correctly. So now as I scroll, you can see that this is working okay. So there you have it. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and do follow us on our social media platforms. By doing so, you'll be notified every time we release new tutorials. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.